Operations on Integers. Ang tutorial na ito ay para sa mga students na gustong matutunan yung rules on adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing integers. Pero bago ang lahat, don't forget to hit the subscribe button kung hindi ka pa nakapag-subscribe at kindly share na din po our videos sa iba pang students para may matutunan din sila. Since operations on integers po yung pag-uusapan natin, let us first define what is meant by the word integers or integer. Ang integer po is simply just a whole number. For a number to be classified as an integer, it must be whole, no fractions or decimals. And an integer can be a positive integer or a negative integer. So by definition, integers are sets of counting numbers, the negatives of the counting numbers, and including 0. At this point, we will start with the multiplication and division operations because working with the rules on multiplying and dividing integers are easier as compared to the rules on adding and subtracting integers. In multiplying and dividing integers, dalawang bagay lang po ang dapat nating tandaan. First, kapag nagmo-multiply o nagdi-divide tayo ng two integers with the same signs, the product or quotient is always positive. Second, kapag nagmo-multiply o nagdi-divide naman tayo ng two integers with different signs, the product or quotient is always negative. Suppose we want to find the product of the integers like 4 and 3. We all know that 4 times 3 or 4 groups of 3 is equal to 12. May iba't ibang notation po tayo na ginagamit sa pagmumultiply ng mga integers. So aside from writing it in this form, we can also write multiplication of two integers using a dot or a parenthesis. Since yung signs ng integer na 4 at integer na 3 are the same, which are both positive, kaya ang na-obtain natin na product is positive. Paano kung yung given integers naman natin this time are negative 4 and negative 3? Ang product na ma-obtain po natin is still positive since yung signs are the same, which are both negative. Kaya ang na-obtain natin na product is positive, which is positive 12. Just bear in mind that multiplying two integers with the same signs equals positive. In other words, positive times positive equals positive, and negative times negative is also equal to a positive integer. How about if we want to find the product of a positive and a negative integer like 4 and negative 3. Observe that the two integers have different signs. Kaya ang na-obtain natin na product is negative 12. Same is true kung yung given integers natin are negative 4 and 3. Ang product pa din na makukuha natin is still a negative integer which is negative 12. Lagi mo lang tatandaan na kapag nagmo-multiply ng different signs, the product is always negative. In other words, positive times negative equals negative, or negative times positive is also equal to a negative integer. How about if we are to multiply 3 or more integers? Say for example, yung mga given integers that we have to multiply are 9, negative 3, and negative 2. Yung mga basic rules pa din na pinag-usapan natin kanina ang i-apply natin to get the product of 9, negative 3, and negative 2. So 9 times negative 3 equals negative 27. It's negative because 9 and negative 3 have different signs. Then we multiply negative 27 and negative 2. Negative 27 times negative 2 equals positive 54. This time it's positive because negative 27 and negative 2 have the same signs. So the product of 9, negative 3, negative 2 is equal to positive 54. Paano naman kung yung mga given integers that we have to multiply are negative 3, negative 11, and negative 2? Pwede nating i-multiply muna yung negative 11 and negative 2. Or we can also start multiplying negative 3 and negative 11 first. So, negative 3 times negative 11 equals positive 33. It's positive because negative 3 and negative 11 have the same signs. Then we multiply positive 33 and negative 2. So, 33 times negative 2 equals negative 66. This time it's negative because 33 and negative 2 have different signs. So the product of negative 3, negative 11, and negative 2 equals negative 66. Pagdating naman sa division of integers, gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, parehong rules lang ang ia-apply natin, but this time yung operation na gagamitin natin is the division operation. Let's say we want to find the quotient of the integers like 12 and 6. We know that 12 divided by 6 would give us a quotient equal to 2. May iba't ibang pamamaraan o notation din tayo na ginagamit sa pagdi-divide ng mga integers. So aside from writing it in this form, we can also use the fraction bar or a slash to denote division of integers. And it is now read as 12 over 6, which is still equal to 2. Pwede din natin gamitin yung symbol na parenthesis na may division symbol sa gitna sa pagdi-divide ng mga integers. At ganun pa din, ang sagot natin dito is still equal to positive 2. Since yung signs ng integer na 12 at integer na 6 are the same, which are both positive, kaya ang na-obtain natin na quotient is positive. Paano kung yung given integers are negative 12 and negative 6? Ang quotient na ma-obtain po natin is still positive since yung signs are the same, which are both negative. Kaya ang na-obtain natin na quotient is positive, which is positive 2. Remember that dividing two integers with the same signs equals positive. In other words, positive divided by positive equals positive. And negative divided by negative is also equal to a positive integer. How about if we want to find the quotient of a positive and a negative integer like positive 12 and negative 6 in this example? Makikita natin na magkaiba yung signs ng dalawang integers. Kaya ang na-obtain natin na quotient is negative 2. Pareho lang din ang magiging sagot natin kung yung given integers are negative 12 and 6. Ang quotient na ma-obtain natin is still a negative integer, which is negative 2. Lagi mo lang tatandaan na kapag nagdi-divide ng different signs, the quotient is always negative. In other words, positive divided by negative equals negative, or negative divided by positive is also equal to a negative integer. Since may iba't ibang notation tayo na ginagamit sa pagdi-divide ng mga integers, if we have negative 12 over negative 6, ang sagot natin is positive 2 since magkapareho yung signs ng dalawang integers. And if we have negative 12 over 6, our quotient would be negative 2 since magkaiba yung signs ng dalawang integers. Ano naman yung rules na ginagamit natin sa pag-a-add o pag-subtract ng mga integers? Masasabi natin na medyo may kahirapan na intindihin yung rules sa adding and subtracting integers at marami din sa mga students yung nalilito sa part na ito. So let's start with the addition of integers. Ano nga ba yung rules sa pag-a-add ng mga integers? Ang rule number 1 po natin states that to add integers with the same signs, we add their absolute values and we copy the common sign for the sum. Sinasabi naman ng pangalawang rule na to add integers with different signs, subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value, then use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. We define absolute value of a number as its distance from 0 on a number line. And since distance po yung tinutukoy dito, that's why the absolute value of any number is always positive. Because distance is always positive. At gumagamit po tayo ng dalawang vertical bars enclosing the number or expression to denote the absolute value. Like for example, the absolute value of negative 5 equals 5, the absolute value of negative 7 equals 7, the absolute value of 4 is equal to 4 itself, and the absolute value of 0 is also 0. In other words, if the number is negative, then make it positive. If the number given is already positive or 0, then we leave it as it is. For example, if we are to add the integers 8 and negative 16, clearly we can say na yung rule number 2 yung gagamitin natin since the integers have different signs or unlike signs. Sinasabi ng rule na kapag magkaiba yung signs, ang gagawin lang natin at first is to subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value. So para magawa natin ito, kunin muna natin yung absolute value ng 8 at negative 16. So the absolute value of 8 equals 8 and the absolute value of negative 16 equals 16. Then we subtract 16 and 8, so we write 16 minus 8. That's subtracting the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value. So we write 16 first, then minus 8, and we obtain 8. We write 8, and then we use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. Since mas malaki yung absolute value ng negative 16, we use the negative sign, kaya yung final answer natin dito is negative 8. So 8 plus negative 16 equals negative 8. Paano naman kung yung given integers na i-add natin are negative 3 and 7? The integers have different signs, kaya yung rule number 2 pa din ang gagamitin natin. First, kunin muna natin yung absolute value ng negative 3 and 7. So the absolute value of negative 3 equals 3, and the absolute value of 7 is equal to 7 itself. Then we subtract 7 and 3, so we write 7 minus 3. That's subtracting the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value. And we obtain 4. We write 4, and we use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. Since mas malaki yung absolute value ng 7, we use the positive sign, kaya yung final answer natin dito is positive 4. So negative 3 plus 7 equals positive 4. How about if we want to find the sum of negative 5 and negative 21? Makikita natin na magkapareho o same signs yung dalawang integers. Kaya rule number 1 ang gagamitin natin dito. First, kunin muna natin yung absolute values ng mga integers na negative 5 and negative 21. So the absolute value of negative 5 equals 5, and the absolute value of negative 21 equals 21. Sinasabi ng rule number 1 na kapag nag-a-add ng same signs, we just simply add their absolute values and copy the common sign for the sum. So we add 21 and 5, that's 21 plus 5, which is equal to positive 26. And since yung common sign is negative, kokopyahin lang natin yung negative sign, so our final answer would be negative 26. So negative 5 plus negative 21 equals negative 26. Paano naman mag-subtract ng mga integers? Ito naman yung rule na ginagamit natin in subtracting integers. Sinasabi ng rule na to subtract integers, ang dalawang bagay na dapat muna natin gawin is to change the subtraction operation to addition, and then we also change the sign of the subtrahend. Tapos susundin na natin yung rule sa adding integers. For example, if we are to subtract the integers negative 17 and negative 8. To subtract negative 17 and negative 8, ang una natin gagawin is to change subtraction to addition. And we also change the sign of the subtrahend. So from negative 8, magiging positive 8 or 8. And we just copy negative 17. Ang gagawin na natin is to add negative 17 and 8. We can say na yung rule number 2 sa adding integers yung gagamitin natin since the integers at this point have different signs. Sinasabi ng rule number 2 sa adding integers na kapag magkaiba yung signs, ang gagawin lang natin is to subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value. So para magawa natin ito, kunin muna natin yung absolute value ng negative 17 at 8. So the absolute value of negative 17 equals 17. And the absolute value of 8 equals 8. Then we subtract 17 and 8. So we write 17 minus 8. And we obtain 9. We write 9 and we use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. Since mas malaki yung absolute value ng negative 17, we use the negative sign. Kaya yung final answer natin dito is negative 9. So negative 17 minus negative 8 is equal to negative 9. How about if we want to subtract 13 and negative 6? First, we have to change the subtraction operation to addition. And we also change the sign of the subtrahend to its opposite. So yung opposite ng negative 6 is positive 6. And we just copy positive 13. Then we follow the rules on adding integers. Sa part na ito, makikita natin na magkapareho o same signs yung dalawang integers. Kaya yung rule number 1 sa adding integers ang gagamitin natin dito. So first, kunin muna natin yung absolute value ng 13 at 6. So the absolute value of 13 equals 13. And the absolute value of 6 is equal to 6. And we just simply add 13 and 6. So that's 13 plus 6, which is equal to 19. So we write 19. And we copy the common sign. Since yung common sign ng 13 at 6 is positive, kaya yung sagot natin is positive 19. Therefore, 13 minus negative 6 is equal to positive 19. Para mas maintindihan pa natin yung subtraction of integers, let us consider another example. So if we are to subtract the integers 8 and 15, ang una muna natin gagawin is to change subtraction operation to addition. So from subtraction, magiging addition na yung operation. And we also change the sign of the subtrahend to its opposite. So yung subtrahend natin dito is 15. Yung additive inverse or opposite ng positive 15 is negative 15. Then we just copy 8. At this point, the integers have different signs. Kaya yung rule number 2 sa adding integers ang susundin natin. First, kunin muna natin yung absolute value ng 8 at negative 15. So the absolute value of 8 is equal to 8. And the absolute value of negative 15 is equal to positive 15. Then we subtract 15 and 8. So that's 15 minus 8, which is equal to 7. So we write 7. And we use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value. Makikita natin dito na mas malaki yung absolute value ng negative 15. So we use the negative sign. Kaya yung final answer natin dito is negative 7. So 8 minus 15 is equal to negative 7. Para mas lalo pa nating ma-master yung mga rules, mag-practice solving lang tayo ng mga similar problems about the operations on integers na maaari nating makita sa mga textbooks. It is an effective method that we can do in learning about integer operations. So we have here 5 problems about the operations on integers. You can write your answers at the comment section at isa-isa nating titingnan yung mga sagot nyo. At pakishare na din po ang tutorial na ito sa iba pang students para may matutunan din sila. Thank you guys and see you on my next video.